Dr. Arthur Hirsch, Director of Webster University and the Vienna campus. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's an honor here at the ICD in Berlin, and thank you for your lecture and the discussions today. We would like to ask you several questions in order to hear your opinion and your thoughts on some of these salient issues. Just to open. Over the past 15 years, the ICD has worked to extend current research, programs and researches in the field of cultural diplomacy, founding the Academy for Cultural Diplomacy and becoming the first institution to have a higher education program focused on the field of cultural diplomacy. How significant do you think that it is to have cultural diplomacy recognized as an academic field?
I think it's very important that cultural diplomacy is recognized as such. I mean, the traditional study of politics and international relations focuses on the acts of states and states as the actors and not on the people. It's clear that if conflicts are to be solved in the world, more people-to-people contact is necessary, and that peoples need to understand each other, and cultural diplomacy can contribute to that. We have at Webster International Relations program, which is somewhat traditional in its academic content, but we also have a program in human rights. We have a bachelor degree in human rights, and we also offer a master's degree in non-governmental organizations, NGOs, which in some ways parallel the work that Institute for Cultural Diplomacy is doing.
Yes. And now that you mention Webster University as an institution, Webster University has multiple locations all over the world. Do you see the need for the practice of cultural diplomacy in your work?
Well, at the Vienna campus of Webster, we have students from 70 different nations and faculty and staff from 20 different nations. So the everyday reality is an exercise in intercultural communication and all the pitfalls that can result from that. So it's very important, I'd say, to be able to understand the other people who you're working with, who you're studying with. And I think that's one of the advantages of a Webster education. For students really, whatever, if they're studying international relations or psychology or media communications or business and management, whatever they're studying, they end up with a very strong international and cultural competency.
Yes, I believe that in 2002 you were the director of Webster's campus in Thailand for 6 months. What did you learn from this international experience, and how do you think that cultural diplomacy works when working overseas?
I learned a lot from being in Thailand. It's the first time I lived in Asia, and first time I really experienced being a minority. I mean, I was the tallest person in the street every day I went out on the street. I think it's an important experience to have, to understand what it feels like to be a minority. Because and especially for people interested in cultural diplomacy, because a lot of the issues in the world today have to do with the treatment of minorities and the equal rights for minorities and how to deal with how the majority of a society deals with, say, the different cultural customs of the minorities in their midst, because they can be very challenging sometimes. So that was one of the many important lessons I learned living in Asia.
Besides being the tallest man in the street,
right.
Do you have any other very specific examples where you really encountered these differences in actually becoming a minority?
Very much so, in the sense of the concept of individual identity, that the sense of identity of many of my students and colleagues there was very much more of a collective or communal identity. Family was the core of their identity. They got their sense of identity from their role in the family, not like for Westerners, especially Americans, where the individual is supreme. And that was, I think, one of the key lessons for me.
I see. What would you consider to be the main differences for students when studying in Europe or when studying in the USA? Do you think that cultural diplomacy has also played a role in bringing the two education systems closer together?
Well, I'm not sure if it's cultural diplomacy, but certainly the process of trying to rationalize the European educational system, known as the Bologna process, has brought the European university degree structures somewhat closer to the American degree structure with bachelor, master, and PhD, whereas before many European countries didn't have the bachelor degree. There still seems to be very large, from my perspective, cultural differences in the understanding of the educational process. We have a large private university sector in the United States, whereas in Europe it's very small, and it's mainly public universities. They tend to be very large institutions, with many of the classes have many hundreds of students, and it's more of a mass education, where the American system, there are many smaller institutions that focus on small classes and focusing on the student more. So I'd say, and also one of the speakers today, though, was from Denmark. He was saying many of the things that I associate with the American system. So it sounds like there has been quite an evolution of moving more towards a system where the professor isn't just the sage on the stage, you know, delivering his wisdom, but rather more like the guide on the side, a coach who's helping the student to develop the skills and habits necessary that they can learn for themselves and be lifelong learners.
Yes. I think that we can also see it here at the Academy for Cultural Diplomacy, that it's more the mediator and the leader of where the debate is going within the classroom, where a lot of students can learn from each other. And I must say that this system is very, very attractive for many students, also from students from abroad. The Academy for Cultural Diplomacy recognizes a number of international conferences, bringing together individuals from very different backgrounds and enables intercultural dialogue. How can cultural diplomacy, in your opinion, help to build trust and allow discussion on global key issues such as sustainable development, human rights, or education?
Well, Webster in Vienna just sponsored what they called a WebMUN, a Webster Model UN, and it was initiated by our students who went and sought and recruited students from 30 different nations, both high school students and university students. And it was student-initiated, student-run, and to me that was and they sat down, their theme was energy politics and sustainability, and they took the format of a Model UN with the Security Council and the General Assembly and the various committees and whatnot. But they really got to know each other, and they got to discuss issues that pertain to the future of the world they're going to live in, that they live in. And I thought that was one possible model. It's not the only model, but certainly I would see the young people themselves getting together from different countries to discussing issues, whether it's sustainability or what have you, is a very powerful learning tool and hopefully a transformative experience for the students themselves.
Indeed, indeed. I'm finished with my questions. I would like to thank you for being here for this interview, and I hope you will enjoy your further stay here in Berlin.
Thank you very much.
Will you stay for the entire conference?
I'll be here till Monday morning.
Outstanding, outstanding. Well, thank you once more, and hopefully I will see you in the upcoming days.
Okay, all right.